I gave him the books that Aviva gave me, and I explained the situation.
All right, before we even get into this, do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, share it around because apparently a lot of people watch these videos every night without subscribing, which is wild to me. It costs you nothing, it helps the channel, and tonight you're going to want to be subscribed because this story, if even half of it is true, is one of those, did this really just happen? Moments that feels less like real life and more like a season finale written by someone who drank way too much coffee, stayed up all night doom scrolling, and decided subtlety was overrated. And look, I'm not saying this to beg. I'm saying it because the next few minutes are going to move fast. And if you've ever watched one of these and thought, I'll subscribe later, later somehow never comes, and then you miss the update that actually explains what just happened. So here's what we're being told happened. And again, take a breath because this is a lot, and it keeps getting heavier the more you sit with it. This morning, early, while most of America was either asleep, making coffee, or arguing with their alarm clock about 5 more minutes, federal marshals allegedly moved in. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, not in a press release, physically, marshals moving in. And at almost the exact same time, in a federal courthouse not far away, Melania Trump was reportedly being sworn in to testify before a grand jury. Same morning, same window of time. Two completely different locations. One person in handcuffs, the other with a hand on a Bible. And if you think that's a coincidence, if you think that just accidentally lined up, I have a bridge, a gold-plated steak, and a beachfront timeshare in Nebraska to sell you. Now let's talk about the timing because this is where it gets interesting. And also where it starts to feel like the writers of this show really leaned into symbolism and didn't even try to hide it. According to the reports, the marshals didn't just wake up and say, you know what sounds fun today? Let's do this now. No. This was coordinated, deliberate, surgical. The kind of thing where everyone involved knows exactly what minute they're moving, who's calling who, and what happens if someone is 5 minutes late. The idea, allegedly, was simple and very cold in its logic. Once she's under oath, once she's in that room, once the door closes, there's no phone call, no text, no intermediary, no last minute, hey, remember our anniversary conversation. He's already in custody. She's already testifying. The window to interfere is gone. Game on. And look, I get it. Some people hear that and immediately go, this is political theater. This is performative. This is meant to send a message. Others hear it and say, no, this is how federal prosecutors operate when they think they have something airtight and they're not messing around. The truth is, it can feel like both at the same time. And welcome to America in 2026, where everything is either a conspiracy, a master plan, or somehow both depending on what side of the internet you live on. So let's slow this down and walk through it like adults, like people who understand that the legal system is boring right up until it suddenly isn't. Because there's a reason people are glued to this story. The claim is that earlier this week, a final appeal was shut down. Door closed. No more legal Hail Marys, no more one last thing. And almost immediately after that, a cooperation agreement involving Melania was filed. That's not dramatic language, that's procedural language. Paperwork. Dense, terrifying paperwork that no one ever reads for fun. And once that agreement was in place, everything else was just logistics. When is she on site? When is she physically inside the building? When is she officially under oath? When can we make sure there is zero communication between these two people before a single word is spoken to that grand jury? So, according to the timeline, early in the morning her legal team shows up at the courthouse. They don't stroll in. They arrive with purpose. They go over the deal one last time, again, because this is the part nobody likes to talk about. It's not glamorous. It's not dramatic. It's lawyers in a room saying, you understand this, right? You understand the consequences. You understand that if you lie, even a little, this gets much worse. And allegedly, she signs. That's the moment. That's the line you cross. Once that signature hits paper, there's no erasing it, no undo button, no I didn't realize. It's done. And that's when prosecutors, according to the reports, give the green light. She's here. She's ready. She's walking into the building. And minutes later, marshals arrive at the property. Not a raid, not helicopters, not sirens blaring for the cameras. Just professionals doing what they do, quietly and efficiently. Papers served. custody taken. No incident. And that's it. One person on the way to a holding facility, the other about to walk into a room where everything you say is recorded, transcribed, and can follow you for the rest of your life. Now, pause here for a second, because I want you to think about how surreal that is on a human level, not a political one. Married couple, same morning. One being processed, photographed, fingerprinted, the other sitting in a chair, breathing in, about to answer questions that could add decades to someone else's life. If this were a movie, you'd roll your eyes and say it's too obvious, too on the nose, too symbolic to be believable. And yet, this is the story people are waking up to with their coffee. And yes, before anyone types it in all caps, I know, alleged, alleged, alleged. I'm using that word a lot on purpose, because that's what this is at this stage. But allegations backed by a grand jury, by warrants, by sworn testimony are not nothing. They're not rumors. They're not tweets. They're not vibes. They're legal actions taken by people whose entire job is to be very careful about when they move. Now, here's where things escalate, because the claim isn't just that there was an arrest, it's that there's a superseding indictment, which is lawyers speak for, we're not done and we just found more. The original charges, we're told, were already serious. Dozens of counts. Financial crimes, paper crimes, the kind of crimes people like to minimize by saying, no one got hurt, which is always funny when banks, taxes, and fraud are involved. But now, allegedly, 12 more counts have been added. 12! That's not a footnote. That's prosecutors saying, something changed. And where did that change come from? According to the story, from inside the marriage, from private conversations, from documents that were never meant to leave a drawer, from recordings made when people thought they were safe, from things you only know if you were there, in the room, when no one thought they'd ever have to explain themselves to anyone else. This is the part where defense attorneys everywhere start stress eating, because insider witnesses are a nightmare, especially when they're not just talking, but handing over receipts, audio, texts, notes, things juries understand without needing a translator. One of the alleged pieces of evidence is a recorded phone call, again, alleged, a conversation about property values, one appraisal low, another one conveniently much higher, and on this recording the voice says something along the lines of, we'll get our guy to do another one at the right number. If you're a prosecutor, you don't just like that, you build a case around it. That's not accounting jargon. That's not confusion. That's intent, which is the hardest thing to prove in cases like this. Then there are text messages. And if you've ever had a text message read back to you in a tone you didn't intend, you know how dangerous they are. Short, casual, honest in a way people don't mean to be. According to the reports, there's an exchange about how to report values, with a line that basically translates to, everyone does it, just don't put it in writing, which of course is itself in writing. The universe has a sense of humor, and it is very dark. And then there are handwritten notes. Notes from meetings with accountants, allegedly describing two sets of numbers, one for banks, one for taxes. People joke about that all the time. It's practically a cliché. But joking at a dinner party and writing it down in a meeting are two very different things. One gets laughs, the other gets exhibits. Now, this is the point where people usually split into camps, and you can almost predict the comments before they're written. One camp says, "This is betrayal. How could a spouse do this?" The other camp says, "This is survival. Anyone would do this." And legally, neither of those opinions matter. What matters is whether the evidence is credible, whether it lines up with other evidence, and whether a jury believes it beyond a reasonable doubt. Juries don't have to like a witness. They just have to believe the proof. And here's the uncomfortable part that people don't like to admit. The motivation for cooperation is rarely noble. It's not about truth or justice or closure. It's math. It's sentencing guidelines. It's a prosecutor sliding a piece of paper across a table that says, here's what you face if you don't help us, and here's what you face if you do. And when that paper says decades versus probation, suddenly morality becomes very flexible. This is also why prosecutors do this when they do it. They wait until the witness is physically in the building, under oath, before they move. Because once the testimony starts, there's no backing out. There's no pressure. There's no leverage left on the other side. The words are said. The record exists. That's it. Now, somewhere around the middle of all this, let me jump in and say this because it matters more than people think. If you're watching right now and you're not subscribed, you're exactly the person I'm talking about. You're clearly interested. You're clearly invested. And hitting subscribe doesn't sign you up for jury duty or a newsletter. It just means you don't miss the next chapter of whatever this turns out to be. So go ahead, click it, like the video, share it with that friend who texts you legal theories at 2 in the morning like they're auditioning for a podcast. Okay? Back to the story. So after hours of testimony, the grand jury reportedly breaks, reconvenes, deliberates, and then votes unanimously to add those additional counts. Unanimous. That word matters. Grand juries don't always agree on everything, and when they do, prosecutors take notice. And then the arraignment is scheduled. Same day. Fast. Efficient. No dragging this out for weeks. This is the system moving with momentum. At the arraignment, the judge reads the charges. All of them. 46 if the reports are accurate. That's not something you forget hearing. And then comes the question of bail, flight risk, access to private aircraft, international connections. All the usual buzzwords get thrown around. Prosecutors argue for strict conditions. Defense argues he's not going anywhere. The judge weighs it, and you usually end up with ankle monitors, passport surrender, travel limits. Not dramatic, but very real. And then comes the real pressure, the kind you don't see on camera. Because once you're facing that many counts, with that kind of evidence, with a cooperating spouse, every lawyer in the room is thinking about one thing: a deal. Not because they want one, but because the alternative is rolling the dice on a jury with recordings, texts, and notes. Trials are unpredictable. Evidence like that is not. Now, people always ask, why would a spouse flip? And the answer is boring but honest. Because federal conspiracy law doesn't care if you were the mastermind or just present. If you knowingly participated, you're in. Same exposure, same risk. And when prosecutors make that crystal clear, cooperation stops being emotional and starts being practical. This also changes the dynamic of the trial completely. The usual defenses: I relied on professionals, I didn't know, I trusted my accountants. They all get a lot weaker when someone says under oath, no, he told them what to do, and here's the proof. That's not speculation, that's evidence. And again, before the comment section catches fire, yes, defense attorneys will attack her credibility. Of course they will. That's their job. They'll say she's saving herself. They'll say she has motive. They'll say she's biased. And jurors will hear that. And then the recording will play, and the text will appear on a screen, and the notes will be shown. And suddenly, credibility isn't about liking someone. It's about whether the evidence lines up. So where does this leave us? Today, allegedly, with an arraignment. In the coming weeks, with motions, arguments, leaks, and headlines that will somehow get even louder. In the coming months, potentially, with plea negotiations. Because when the risk is decades, even the most defiant defendants start doing quiet math late at night. And I know there are people watching right now who are furious about this story, people who are thrilled by it, and people who are just exhausted by all of it. That's where we are as a country. One set of facts, 1,000 emotional reactions. My job is to walk you through what's being claimed, what it would mean legally, and why the timing matters. And the timing matters because this wasn't random. If the reports are accurate, this was deliberate, coordinated, designed to remove interference, lock in testimony, and then act. That tells you how seriously prosecutors are taking it, regardless of how you feel about the people involved. Now, I want to hear from you, genuinely. Do you think this ends in a plea, or does it go all the way to trial? Do you think a jury, hearing recordings and reading texts, convicts? Or do you think the defense successfully frames this as unreliable, biased, and politically charged? Put it in the comments. I actually read them, especially the ones that disagree intelligently. And before we wrap this up, do the YouTube things one more time. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't, share it if you know someone who's going to have very strong opinions about this at dinner tonight. Because this isn't the end of the story, it's barely the end of the beginning. What happens next is where it gets really interesting. Court appearances, pretrial motions, possible plea talks. And if it goes to trial, a public unpacking of conversations that were never meant to see daylight. That's not entertainment. That's consequence. So we'll keep watching. We'll keep breaking it down. We'll stick to evidence, not hysteria. And when the next development drops, you'll see it here. Subscribe, stay with me, and ask yourself one last question as you close this video. If you were facing decades in prison, and the only way out was telling the truth about someone you loved, what would you do? All right, before we even get into this, do tours according to the